Hi, everybody. We're going to just go ahead and start by doing a pretty quick introduction. It's a pretty short panel, so we're going to be a little abbreviated. Give us a...
Hi, I'm Bojan Tunguz. I'm one of the latest on the stage from H2O on Kaggle's, Kaggle Grandmasters. I'm sure I'm not the last. In previous life, I was a theoretical physicist. I started dabbling into data science many years ago, and then I accidentally discovered Kaggle, and I've quickly figured out that's probably the fastest way to level up my skills and meet new people and learn more about the field. Soon enough, it was very much a main focus of my learning experience, and before long, I was able to get to the master and grandmaster status.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mattias. I'm from Germany. Joined H2O like roughly 1 year, a bit more than 1 year ago. I have a background in computer science. Prior to H2O, I worked in the automotive industry in Germany, and yeah, similar story like Tunguz. Once I discovered Kaggle, it was quite an exciting journey that started, and actually it brought me here. And it's really an exciting environment, and seeing so many people here, and every time it's getting more and more actually at our events, so that's exciting. And yeah, first of all, I hope you enjoyed the conference, and yeah, so.
Okay, so my name is Vladimir. My background is also in theoretical physics, and I learned word data science and like what it is. It's about 4 years ago. Somewhere February, like 4 years ago, I learned that Kaggle exists, and I needed to to check how well they're doing machine learning, and I just joined my first competition, and it was epic fail. I mean, basically, I thought about myself much better than reality showed me. So they invested a bit more time, and I moved from theoretical physics from academia. I moved to first just to data science, and I still worked on Kaggle in the evenings. I boosted my traditional machine learning skill. I moved to my second job that was more about traditional machine learning. So during the day, traditional machine learning, and in the evening, I was doing computer vision deep learning. Then I switched and got my third job, and now during the day, I do a lot of computer vision and deep learning, and so I apply these technologies to the self-driving at Lyft.
Hi, my name is Dmitry. I'm a Kaggle addict. So I was the first Grandmaster hired by H2O, and the main reason why H2O I decided to join H2O because they allowed me to play Kaggle a lot. So that's, in general, that's it.
I'm Marius. Also on Kaggle, I participate with the nickname kazAnova, which is not what it means. It comes from Kazani, which is my mother's last name, and ANOVA, which is analysis of variance. Interestingly, my background is from economics. I actually share a similar experience with Vladimir, so initially I just wanted to expand my skill set to this area, and in my first competition I also did really bad. So maybe this is something that Kaggle Grandmasters have been through, from bad to getting somewhere at some point. Yeah, and I've been working as a data scientist at H2O. I later got a PhD on computer science and machine learning, specifically in ensemble methods, and I get to practice some of that working for H2O.
Hi, I'm Sudalai Rajkumar, and I use the name SRK. So for people who come from India know that SRK is a famous actor in India. So I just use that name so that I can also get famous. So yeah, just kidding. So yeah, I also work as a data scientist at H2O. So I primarily work on the NLP side here at H2O. And I have about 8 years of experience in this field currently. So, and I came to H2O through Mark and Marius and Dmitry and Faron. So I almost work with them even before H2O. So it's not a new place for me when I joined here.
Great. Yeah, and I'm Mark Landry. I've teamed up with many of these. That's something that's interesting to us, is getting to team up in Kaggle. You get to meet people, and so I've known SRK for a long time, at Mario's through the competition, and that's partially why they're here. Let's go ahead and get started with some of the questions. So you'll see the board up there. The Slido has some of these. So we've loaded it with a few questions from previous panels, and you can vote on the ones, and I'm pretty much going to read them in order of the way that the ones that have the most votes. So the first one is, you've all spent long hours on Kaggle. what has motivated you when the going got tough?
Well, to me, it's mostly like a curiosity, you know. If I see somebody, if I see somebody who performs better than myself, I'm kind of becoming curious, actually, why, what exactly he or she did, basically, you know, to make like my score better, and I can actually, you know, can stop myself until I figure out. That's the main reason.
It's like a video game. I mean, what motivates you to keep improving your score in a video game? And in a way, it is similar because you have a set of tools you can use or abilities, which could be the algorithms, the different ways to validate, different ways to do feature engineering, and you just to put everything together in order to beat other people's score.
For me, both in Kaggle and in real life, I like to try to do several things at the same time and maybe not be the most efficient use of my time. But usually when I get stuck in one problem, I usually jump to another one and work on that one. And a lot of times when I come back to the previous problem, I see it with the new eyes and I can actually appreciate some new insight that when I was trying too hard, maybe it wasn't obvious. So like that's how I usually deal with these things.
I'll add personally that in the forums, a lot of times it can help when you're discouraged reading that everybody's discouraged. So Kaggle's a really nice place to share, and usually a lot of people get frustrated at the same time, and that can be kind of motivating too. Like, okay, I haven't missed everything. This is hard for everybody. The next one we have, what skills do you think are needed to be a great data scientist? A broad question.
I believe data science is an industrial job, not academic, not competitive machine learning, it's an industrial job. So to be a great data scientist, you need to be able to solve problems that business is requires you to solve. And this requires what? Understanding domain knowledge, being able to communicate within different teams, being able to figure out what data do we have, what data do you need to do. You need to understand, and this is kind of directly related to Kaggle, what technology is possible. Typically, I believe many of you have this experience. I mean, when some requests from management are coming and they're telling you use machine learning and give us some magic, and you need to understand what is possible, when it is possible, what is the timeline, what resources do you need, what help from other teams do you want. So in this sense, it's you need to understand machine learning, its limitations and what and how, and also being able to communicate with other peoples within your company or maybe other companies. So that's what make you great data scientist. So this set of skills will allow you to solve problems that business asks you to solve in a fast, efficient way, minimum resources, maximum impact.
Okay. So yeah, other than the general skills, say they're learning the ML concepts and the statistics concepts are good with some of the tools. So as he was mentioning, so some more things are to add are say in an industry perspective, say being inclusive in nature or being curious to know why it's happening that way, and going to look at the data to understand why it's happening that way and come up with some insight. So that's one thing. And then one other important quality is, I would say, is to is a structured thinking or critical thinking to understand say okay, so this has happened and this is the result I got after running this test, so what do I do next? And say take a think through and take a wise decision, data driven decision based on that one. So that's one more point. And one more very important point which Vladimir also mentioned is communicating. So able to say at least most of the times when we talk to a senior management or a customer, so we won't be able to say they won't understand the actual algorithms or the math part of it. So if you are able to say express ourselves in a much better way, so that's one important skill as well.
Okay. What was one thing you wish you knew when you first got started?
Everything. I wish I knew all the algorithms I know now, all the feature engineering tricks I know now. I wish I knew all the people I know now that I could have formed sort of collaborations before. Everything.
I really do like this question, a lot. So to be honest, it's not possible to enter the same river twice, right? So my favorite answer on this particular question would be, back in the days I started Kaggle, I wish I would knew Bitcoin price in 2018. That's really the best knowledge I can actually get.
For me, it's more like that it would be so much fun to actually getting involved in all this Kaggle process and diving into competitions. And like Mario said, it's more like a video game. It's really highly addictive. So you learn on the way. It's not that you enter it because you want or you have the feeling that you need to learn something, but it just comes as a side effect. That you become good because you are addicted by the game. And back in the days, we call it the old leaderboard in Kaggle. It was like a really nice experience to just submit your predictions, and then there was some nice effects and a bit like old school. Nowadays, leaderboard is much more modern, but it's most of us still like the old one because of the feeling it provided when you actually jumped up some ranks and actually you wanted to maximize the amount of times you see that little animation where you get up some ranks, and especially if you saw this big number one banner, that was really nice and hard to get, of course. But yeah, so for me, I kind of entered late because I found out about Kaggle by accident, but back then it was already like kind of old. So yeah, a bit earlier getting known that Kaggle exists, that would be cool. And then with the fun aspect, the circle closes in a way.
So for me, one thing that I believe would be nice for me to know. So I started working and moved from academia and started doing Kaggle work first, second, 10th, 20th, 30th competition. I got Kaggle Master, and a year later I realized, and right now it looks kind of obvious, it's not enough to solve the competition. You need to sell it. What do I mean by this? You need to write some blog post, what works, what doesn't, what was the problem. It helps you to structure, and it also allows the other people to see some achievements and what's happening. So you give people knowledge, you also let them know that you exist. And so I started writing some kind of blog post. Then I realized that maybe blog post is not enough. So I started publishing papers about Kaggle competitions. You take Kaggle competition, you say this was the problem, this is fit predict, a bit of some academic water here and there, and surprisingly this papers got accepted to competitions. You can look at my Google Scholar and how many did accepted last year. Also then I just realized, okay, let's do next step. Let's just try some academic competition, and I tried for MICHI and I tried for CVPR. I took my baseline pipelines, models from, from private repositories that I have from the competition on Kaggle. I don't even tweak them well, and basically on MICHI I got few first places, and CVPR last year also worked pretty well, and again, bunch of papers. And this work was appreciated in my current position at work. I got a lot of feedback from the people that helps in their research and maybe in some other things. There was a paper, so my nickname on GitHub is Tunguz. Just for popcorn with my buddy, we published a paper, Tunguz.net, something like this. We are not like everyone else, we are state of the art. Basically some kind of tech report that we did it just for popcorn. One of my most quoted papers. At different conferences, people come to me and say, thank you, really useful, things like this. So I wish for me 4 years ago, when I started doing Kaggle, I knew that it's so beneficial to express my work to rest of the humanity in terms of blog posts, papers, academic competitions and other type of activities.
Yeah, I'd say that's the reason that a lot of people, we're here is teaming up. And in fact, the reason I met SRK and Marios is because I almost was forced to publish something, to write a little post about how I did something because we were going to share it at a meetup. And Marios laughed, this is one of the greatest things I've seen, you're going to regret it. And sure enough, he passed me on the leaderboard. I was first at the time, but they used the insights from that. But in the end, look what we have. I've met people through this. And so the sharing in Kaggle is really impressive, actually. And just talking about your work and wanting to share it. I've done a lot of team ups with people. I don't care if you submit anything, just join a team. So that's exciting. This is one we, I think, always do. So without giving away kind of secret sauce, what do you usually use in Kaggle? And kind of leave that open. All sorts of recipes. Now, it's a weird. We've asked this for so many years, and you guys have been attending the conference. They're here to put it in the driverless. So maybe we can touch on something else that you regularly do, or maybe where you start, but anything that kind of comes to mind.
You go ahead.
Okay, so I think I already emphasized this today, but one of the most important things actually is try to understand your data. It can be involved, like, visualizing it, building some plots. Then one of the main goal why you should do that, you have to decide what a validation approach you're going to take for this data set. Because that's, if you pick up the wrong validation schema, that will hurt you a lot. Maybe like even from the start of a competition, maybe at the time you're going to shift to ensembling, basically, it will hurt you if you just pick up not the best possible validation schema available. Just, you won't be able to finish in the first place if you didn't think your validation and taken maybe process through from the very beginning.
Yeah, that would have been my answer.
No,
to get
no
this
more
going
tricks,
as
right?
well. Yeah, well, and what you see in Kaggle is, trust your CV. There's a lot of these phrases, and people eventually learn you kind of have to do a mix of both. But yeah, that's almost like day one is make sure that your internal leaderboard set is your internal CV is the same that matches Kaggle. So an early submission, some people don't do this, some people do, is to get a submission in and make sure that you see that your bearings are right internally and that you understand the problem. So nothing there.
Maybe some other things that I figured out is you have to see, if you want to do really good in a competition, that of course something like setting up your validation scheme and that comes first, and it's one of the most important things. But on top of that, if you want to do really good in a competition, it's also worth time spending in reading all the forum posts, even if they appear to be totally non-related. But often, like, people post something which, like, why is that? Some oddities about the data, and sometimes those threads didn't even get a response. But actually, what the people pointing to is to some useful information that you can use to exploit. And there have been examples in past competitions that some really smart hackers found some leakage based on some comments in the forums, which got like zero attention at all. And so, in a way, it's a game with different sources where you get your knowledge from and your information. So nowadays, it's a kernel, it's a forum, it's past winning solutions. And if it comes down to secret source, I think that it's shifted a bit, because back in the days when master was the highest tier, there was some like really secret knowledge within the like master circle of Kagglers, like assembling and proper encoding of target values, like the careful cross-validation, double nested, etc. But that's now all common knowledge, and there's not so much secret I'm aware of. Or maybe that's a problem in itself. I think nowadays you have really access to all information. The trick is, or the key is to ask the right questions and look for the answer specifically in that environment. And you will be surprised that it's not that hard after all if you get a bit used to the platform, for instance. And then it's, in my opinion, the one and only platform where you can learn really rapidly. And if you're then on top of that, posting your insights, writing blog posts, papers, etc., it's also fun, because if you can either go down the gamification route of Kaggle, and it's a good feeling to get upvotes and nice comments, or you see benefits for your professional career. So that's all good. So there's a lot of opportunities.
I'll just briefly add one part. Like most of us are, pretty high because of our own individual contributions. But I think for me, the most interesting and most fun part of Kaggle is actually teaming up. And so if I would have one secret sauce, is how to structure and choose your team. After you've been on Kaggle for a while, you notice certain people are good at one particular thing, or excel at something in particular, or have their very own particular way of doing things. And one of the best things for Kaggle is that to ensemble a very different set of models. So the same way you would like to ensemble different set of models, you would like to have a team with a very different set of strengths. So like you find someone who's really good at R, and he has a very different approach of than someone who's doing everything in Python. You find a statistician and you find a physicist. So these people have a very different way of looking at the problems, and a lot of times they also help someone who's actually relatively fresh to Kaggle, because he's looking at things with a new, fresh set of eyes that some of us who've been there for years have already kind of been kind of jaded and don't really look at the things the same way.
It's almost a counter to that. I'm going to skip to one question. We'll go back to the other. Is data science all about creating the best performing algorithm? And this is usually used in reference to giant ensembles. So what else is needed? So any opinions on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Is data science all about the best performing algorithm?
I don't think so. In my case, is you mean data science in general, or like winning on Kaggle?
Yeah, it says data science, so let's attack that.
So in data science, no, it's definitely not. Not even on Kaggle. Like as in one specific algorithm. I mean, you probably want to combine a few of them, but then I guess you can say that this one very strong algorithm after you combine many. But no, I think there are so many different aspects you need to take into account. How you make certain that your model doesn't create any biases, or that it is quite often it is interpretable. It is easy to put in production. Sometimes it's just complexity needs to become a function of the time you have available, the resources you have available to do your scoring. Sometimes you don't even know what to do with the data. You need to find out if there is any juice in the data that you could potentially use for profit or other means. So definitely not just one model. But I mean, it is even Kaggle, I think, doesn't promote that anymore. I mean, there's so many different type of different problems. There was, I think, competition recently where you just had to check, get data for the NFL and try to come up with rules that could potentially avoid someone from getting hurt. So, yeah, data science is not just about the one powerful algorithm.
Okay, so I think, solving the business problem is what data science is all about. So rather than just improving the algorithm. So yeah, improving the algorithms accuracy is one thing, but solving the business problem ultimately at the end of the day, like it's the main thing. And as Marios was mentioning, and most of the times, like say, business also wants to understand about the interpretability part. So getting something like which is also not really very black box, probably like if it's more interpretable, like we could potentially take some business decisions out of it. So that's one more important aspect of it, I think.
Okay. What books or publications do you recommend reading to help improve my data science skills?
At some point, I was trying to stay in touch with the current state of the art research and read all recent papers. I was following on Twitter, in good researchers and seeing what they're posting, and it was a bad approach. I was staying in shape in some sense, but my brain tends to forget stuff that is not useful. And reading about some paper and technical details, I read this, I understand this, but I instantly forget about this. So later on, I switched to a bit different approach. When I'm facing some problem, let's say at work or maybe at Kaggle or maybe some side projects, I read extensively about this problem. I'm looking for biggest conferences, Google's words about this, look for these papers, I see who refers on them, I see what they're referring to, and I look for the ideas, look maybe for some open source code, for implementations, and I'm checking this. And so basically I'm addressing this problem. I'm reading a lot of modern literature from different big conferences, small conferences, preprints, recent blog posts regarding this topic. After this topic is closed, maybe it's deadline at Kaggle, or maybe I finish this project at work, or maybe something else, I am switching to another one. So, and just repeat the procedure. So reading regarding this topic. These days, the amount of information and papers is so large that any type of reasonable filtering works, but it's just still hard. Data science, machine learning, deep learning is such a huge and like developing area that just, you know, like finding some good source and following it may be just tricky.
I mean, even when I Google something right now, I mean, Kaggle pops up first. So I think it's a very good place. It has a lot of compiled information. And, you know, because the people, obviously, they're very interested at winning in different contexts. If there is something out there that it is, you know, useful, there's a new innovation, they'll be very keen to try it and share that information, because Kaggle also rewards sharing right now. So it is a very good place to start if you don't know where else to go.
Yeah, I would use this actually opportunity to promote a couple of online courses available right now. So instead of actually looking for a book, you might probably actually, you know, register on this course and just basically, you know, learn from that. For classical machine learning, that can be mlcourse.ai. That's a very good course. It's going to start like in the next couple of days, maybe like in the next week. For deep learning, I would recommend fast.ai or maybe Stanford courses, which are actually also available online. That's a very good courses. They are very, you know, it's a very easy way to start actually, you know, at least to learn about data science, actually not about data science, but machine learning in general.
I should also mention that if you're particularly interested in winning Kaggle competitions, there is one call in Coursera, win data science competitions from top Kagglers. I'm also included. And I think since this was published, it has been very difficult for me to get a good spot again. So pretty much every trick we've ever used, it's there, and yeah, and you can get it.
And that kind of bridges the online one. I think we had more online answers than anything. Elements of statistical learning comes up a lot as a book, but it does seem like online and just doing is typically the response, and the response here. What was your most challenging Kaggle content and why?
I always find the one that have great demand for resources is a little bit tough for me. You know, some of the image classification ones that had maybe 1 terabyte of data. I mean, I find it hard to find like machines or create an environment to tackle this type of problems. And for me, this has been the most challenging one. I mean, even if when you try to tune an algorithm, it takes hours to just get some feedback. And you know, this for me is the most challenging. The most challenging problems. Everything else, I feel, you know, I will try different things and I will be able to pull something. But with a very, very huge data set, this is where it becomes more difficult to get the right resources.
For me, it was actually a competition called Homesite Code Conversion that we, Mathias and I, actually won together. And the problem actually was not the problem itself, but the mental pressure which developed over the time. So what happened there is that we had a huge lead, like a huge lead in terms of what means huge, based on the error metric, but it was a kind of big lead that we had like for several weeks, and 1 week before the competition ended, and we always call it so the last week, because it's like really a special time where all the good Kagglers and Grandmaster Masters join and show up, and so did the famous group of Russian people and our friend Lois Tagos, who died unfortunately a few years ago. But they came closer and closer, and we weren't able to make any more progress, and so it was not clear if we were able to defend our first spot till the end, and it was such a close race, and in the end it was really like, seemed to be a coin flip who will win that competition, and for me that was almost too much to handle, so the mental pressure, and that is also something interesting, what you might take into consideration, that once you get into the game and getting better ranks and getting upset. It can be like build up like some really hard pressure on your mind to say, okay, I need to like defend my rank and I need to stay up. And personally, I needed to take a step back from Kaggle because it almost like it came to a point where I couldn't handle that anymore, and I cared too much about my rank and wanted to conserve it. And that's actually, so to say, a downside which can happen as well, right? If you get into such a competitive mindset. So it's not always like the sweet spot.
So today, like guys told and like answered the question, what is important for good like performance in Kaggle, and like guys said like good validation is important. If you have reliable like cross validation and correlates with leaderboard, you do improvement, and this allows you to rate fast. The issue is there are plenty of competitions in Kaggle in which it's not possible. Your train set comes from one distribution, test set from another distribution. You may like do your cross validation, then you do kind of submission, and like they're not correlated. It's not happening that often, but like it is the case. So competition that had this maybe not issue, like this interesting feature was like DSTL competition that was happening 2 years ago, satellite imagery, image segmentation, and like participants spent few months working this problem. No one figured out how to do validation. And this part was very frustrating, very tough. And so what do you have? Like you have cross-validation, you have leaderboard score, then improvements in them are not correlating, still you won't go to the top. With your eyes you see what's happening in the images, and no one tells you what to do, because in all textbooks people tell you like do cross-validation, this is your friend. It's not always the case. So when I face competition that has this type of the issue, train set and test set come from different distributions, and I still need to go to the top, it becomes tough, interesting, and maybe frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because it feels like it's a bit of a gamble. Like you spent all this time trying to do well, you have the public leaderboard, and everyone knows the private's going to be a little different, and so everyone's kind of hedging their bets on what the right way to do it is. And that can be interesting discussions within a team when you're all trying to discuss how do we take our two shots, how do we do this when we know something's going to be different. To get a high rank, oops, I lost it, but in Kaggle, do you think deep learning is necessary?
These days, yes. Number of computer vision competitions that are hosted at Kaggle right now, it's just like a lot, and so you can try to get to the top, just work on the tabular data, but it's harder than deep learning significantly is in my understanding, or maybe because I like it more than, like tabular data, and so like getting to the, not too many competitions with tabular data, and they're much more competitive, so just getting to the top of the Kaggle ranking, computer vision deep learning is probably the must.
It's definitely useful, and definitely you need it to be pretty competitive, but I know many who are still in top 10 who don't do vision competitions at all. The big difference between vision and tabular data is that tabular data ones tend to have an order of magnitude more participants, so if you do well in those, number of points you actually get can actually easily trump like 2 or 3 vision competitions.
Anybody else? Yeah, I think most of us are trying to diversify and get better at deep learning, but versus deep learning experts, so it's interesting. I think we'll have one last question. Oh, I lost the best question. Sorry about that. How do we encourage those from gender diverse groups into becoming Kaggle Grandmasters? Interesting one to end on.
I'm not sure that it's a good idea encouraging people to becoming Kaggle Grandmaster. Kaggle is addictive, and it's like second unpaid full-time job. Most likely there are much better activities that you can spend for this time. I don't know, spend with your family, friends, and maybe Kaggle is not the thing for you. I'm not sure that it's for everyone. At the same time, Kaggle, I always tell this at work and to everyone, people, for some specific type of machine learning and data science, amount of knowledge per unit of time that you get with respect to academia or to industry, 10x to 100x per unit of time. So for those, so the question probably should be rephrased. For those who want to boost their knowledge in machine learning, how can we encourage them to join Kaggle? Because for me, it's always an issue to convince my friends that work in industry and they have some kind of machine learning knowledge, and I propose them to join Kaggle and boost their skill, or my friends in academia to do the same. it's pretty hard, and I don't even know how to do it reliably because they typically say Kaggle is cute, but we have our stuff to do. So maybe like other guys can like also give me advice how to do it better.
And this is a tough one, but Marius and I were discussing this before. I mean, I think ultimately Kaggle is a meritocracy. I think they've achieved that. And so at least the low water mark is that it encourages everybody. So.
Yeah, and I think I mean, data science in general, I think is genderless, for example. I wouldn't want to encourage anyone specifically. You know, data science has worked for us. You know, we love it. We like what we're doing. We like it for specific reasons. You know, data is such an empowering field. Extracting information, it has shaped the world. You can see it in sort of every action you make, especially on the web. It has worked for us. We had like some great time playing, creating products, and if that can be appealing to people, we are like always happy and eager to help, and would like to encourage it, but. Yeah, I wouldn't specifically target any group.
All right, I think that's all the time we have, so thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, and it was already